My Lords, I too would like to compliment the noble Baroness Cox for her hard work in bringing this important measure before us today, and for her tireless efforts to help vulnerable people across the globe. My Lords, whenever anyone mentions religion in questions in your Lordship's house, there's a noticeable air of embarrassment. Why are we discussing religion? Religion is a wholly private matter. As a Sikh, I totally disagree. In the Sikh view, the whole aim of religion is to make us better human beings with a responsibility to help the less fortunate and work for greater fairness and justice for all. Unfortunately, looking at the way religions operate and their seemingly meaningless rituals doesn't always inspire us with confidence. A very real problem is that religious teachings are very easy to state. I could put key Sikh teachings on one side of A4, but they're far more difficult to live by, and instead of there's an undue emphasis placed on rituals and cultures that in the Sikh view have nothing to do with ethical imperatives of religion. To make things worse, leaders of religion have often misused their position of authority to pursue political power, sometimes by violent means, living in luxurious palaces while countenancing poverty and suffering amongst those they control. As a result, religion has found itself, particularly in the West, banished to the margins of society to quietly contemplate the hereafter rather than working for the betterment of society. Meanwhile, secular leaders have taken over the business of running society without the interference from religion. But our do-it-yourself society often forgets to place due emphasis on right, wrong, and responsibility in its decision-making. Let me elaborate on the dangers of this do-it-yourself approach. Whenever I'm asked to help with a self-assembly, I throw the instructions to one side and start putting all the pieces together and stand back to admire my handiwork, only to find it skewed and ready to fall apart. My Lords, I invite you to stand back and look at society today. Record prison population, many repeat offenders, more than 100 prisoners, some with acute mental problems taking their own lives last year, more people getting divorced, often resulting in family breakdown, with a record number of children taken into what we euphemistically call care. I could go on. An ever-growing proportion of our national budget is now spent on sticking plaster solutions that ignore underlying causes of not paying due attention to ethical imperatives for a healthy society. Logic suggests that we should look again at guidance for responsible living, contained in our different faiths. But unfortunately, guidance in religious books is not always clear and, at times, confusing. Ethical teachings are often entwined with questionable or oppressive cultural practices that are at variance with what today we see as fundamental human rights. To be effective and make the contribution to society that the founders of our religion intended, religions must open themselves to scrutiny and questioning. In speaking in gurdwaras and to Sikh and interfaith groups, I always urge the questioning of religious teachings, particularly if they seem to be at variance with common sense and human rights. We need to do this if we're to make religion more relevant in the world of today. The mixing of religion with a sometimes oppressive culture, and the noble Baroness Flather referred to this, is a particular problem. The Labour Minister and founder of the Health Service, Aneurin Bevan, said that whenever he heard the word culture, he immediately thought of bacteria. Today we know that there are good and bad bacteria. Similarly, there's also good and bad culture. Good culture that enhances respect for elders and responsibility towards others. There is also, however, oppressive culture that denigrates those of different beliefs, women, or those that simply appear different. The prevailing culture at the time of Guru Nanak some 500 years ago in both the West and the East saw women as lesser beings. It had bacteria-like, infected and distorted ethical teachings found in our different faiths. Sadly, negative attitudes to women are still all too evident in much of the world today. The power and hold of negative culture is easy to understand if we look at the Sikh community. Guru Nanak, the founder of the Sikh religion, was appalled by the way women were treated in the India of his day. He taught the dignity and complete equality of women. The same teaching was also emphasized by 9 successive gurus and are incorporated in our holy scriptures, the Guru Granth Sahib. Women can often do and lead Sikh services, and girls are encouraged to enter the professions. The Sikh chaplain to the British Armed Services is a woman. Yet, despite such clear teachings, some men in the community are still clearly influenced by the more negative culture of the subcontinent. Negative attitudes to women, all too evident in Islam, have become embedded in religious texts, which, as we've heard, give less weightage to the word of a woman and lesser inheritance rights. There are also particular problems with attitudes to divorce. The negative attitudes prevalent in Islam prevent Islam from playing its full part in social improvement. I have many Muslim friends, and most are happily married and a credit to society, but Sharia law and divorce are heavily weighted in favor of men and are at variance with the law of this country. We cannot have parallel judicial systems, particularly one that discriminates against women. We've today heard many examples of the weightage against women in the proceedings of Sharia courts and the resultant suffering. We've heard the concerns of our Prime Minister, Theresa May, when as Home Secretary she referred to wives being left in penury and a supposed right of husbands to chastise their wives. I would like to conclude by again complimenting the noble Baroness Cox, who does so much to help women across the world, often in dangerous and perilous circumstances. I believe that the proposals in her bill will not only enhance and help safeguard the position of women in the Islamic community, but importantly also leave Islam stronger and better able to play its full part in the world of today. I believe it's time for all our religions to do a little spring cleaning, to bring true religious teachings to the fore in helping to give ethical direction to society. As a Sikh, I strongly support the bill and I hope it goes on to become law.